Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Hope Hospice's Family Caregiver Education Series. I'm Debbie Emerson, Hope's community health educator and certified dementia specialist. I've been with Hope for about the past 8 years as the facilitator of our family caregiver program. And in addition to my 30+ years experience as a health educator, I have many years of experience as a family caregiver for loved ones with dementia. So my goal today, as always, is to share information with you that's based both on my professional training, research, and as well as my personal experiences. So today, my co-presenter is Gia Barcel, Hope's Manager of Dementia Services.
Thank you, Debbie. Like Debbie mentioned, I'm Hope Hospice's Manager of Dementia Services and Community Education. I am a TIPA Snow certified dementia consultant and trainer. You'll hear her name a lot in our presentation today. I've been with Hope for about 9 years now. I look forward to talking with you all today about self-care for caregivers. Caring for someone living with dementia is unique and it's challenging to say the least. My hope is that you come away today from this webinar with a new awareness for what self-care is all about, as well as the knowledge that you are not alone. There's resources out there for you. So today, we are going to be talking about change, trying to understand the causes of burnout, and some suggestions for coping, and examining our emotions surrounding the caregiver experience. And you may not believe us yet, but we'll end on a positive note as we look at the rewards of caregiving. Yes, I did say rewards of caregiving. There truly are some out there.
Okay. So I'd like to start today by sharing a quote. Life is not the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it is. The way you cope with it is what makes the difference. The way in which we respond will direct and influence the event more than the event itself. So this is our theme for today, exploring how we cope with challenges and remembering that our response to those challenges makes all the difference between thriving and crashing and burning. So rather than just giving you lists of things to do to make you feel better, our focus for today is going to be more on helping you to understand why caregiving is so stressful, especially for those of you who are caring for one with dementia. And so we're hoping that by understanding the causes, you're going to gain some insight that can help you better deal with the situation and maybe even help you to avoid or minimize burnout. And just another note before we actually get started. I recently read an article on TIPA Snow's website, and Gia mentioned TIPA, and as you may know, she's one of the leading experts on dementia care. So the article was titled, Loved One, Maybe, Maybe Not. And it touched on a topic that I've addressed in my classes. Others often use the term loved one as a kind of a catch-all phrase when referring to the person receiving care from a family member. And I've certainly used it many, if not all of my presentations over the years. But I always thought that it was a bit disingenuous because really, sometimes when we're providing care, we may not be feeling the love. And not all of us provide care for someone that we do love, even though it may indeed be a family member. So at my last family caregiver support group, I brought up this topic just to get an idea of how the members felt about using that term, loved one. And it led to a really interesting discussion and also provided a safe environment for our members to talk openly about their feelings regarding the person for whom they were providing care. Many admitting that sometimes the caregiving situation was so overwhelming that they didn't really like this person and kind of hated the entire situation. This is completely normal and it's completely understandable because caregiving is hard and it really takes a toll on us. So my dilemma, and Gia's as well, is how do we refer to your care recipients in our presentations? Now, the term care recipient is pretty generic and doesn't really evoke any emotions. So I do like that, even though I think it is kind of a bit clinical. So today we're going to cover all the bases, and we're going to use the terms loved one, care recipient, the person for whom you're providing care, and you can interpret that however you like. So I have the link to that particular article on the resource list, so I hope you'll take a look because it's an interesting one.
One of the challenges of dementia care education is that each of your journeys is unique, and the timeline for the progression of dementia varies from individual to individual. If today's audience is like most who've attended Hope Hospice's webinars, we will most likely have care partners with care recipients in varying stages of dementia, from early mild cognitive impairment to very late or end stages. Or maybe some of you are here to get a better sense of how to handle a future dementia diagnosis. And even if dementia is not a part of your caregiving experience, the information we'll be sharing today is relevant to all caregiving situations. So, even though the underlying condition that's causing the dementia can influence the symptoms and progression, all dementias have much in common. Regardless of the current situation, the dementia will progress, in most cases to the point where the person needs round-the-clock care. What can be confusing and challenging is that the person living with dementia will have moments, maybe even hours, where they're lucid. They may even seem to be just like their former selves. They'll have good days and not so good days. But the sad reality is that dementia is a condition that is chronic and will get progressively worse. As more and more abilities are lost, the caregiver's role will evolve and responsibilities will increase, and in fact, in some cases, quite dramatically. The time will inevitably come where one person cannot provide all of the care all of the time. It's essential that you ask for help from relatives, friends, professional in-home care providers, and you may even consider facility placement should your care recipient's needs become more than you can handle. So it's important for your own well-being as well as your loved one's well-being that they view you first as their spouse, son, daughter, grandchild, rather than just someone who takes care of their physical needs. With increased caregiver responsibilities, it's only natural that the caregiver's stress level increases. A person with dementia may also experience an increase in stress and frustration as more and more abilities are lost. So we need to be aware of this and make sure that we do everything possible to focus on providing support and creating a meaningful life for both the caregiver and the person living with dementia. If you viewed our webinars or taken our classes before, you know that one of our best resources is Teepa Snow. Teepa Snow is a nationally renowned dementia educator, as Debbie mentioned earlier, and we go to her a lot for a lot of our caregiving information. We've got a short video clip here for you to watch where Teepa explains to us why the dementia care partner journey is different and why it's so important to recognize that. Let's check it out.
Hi, I'm Teepa Snow. I'm a dementia care consultant and a trainer. I have over 30 plus years as an occupational therapist. My goal, my purpose is to help people who are trying to care for somebody who has dementia. Dementia's tough. You need to learn more about it and learn what it does and what it doesn't do and what it's going to mean for you. 4 out of 5 families will fall apart because this is a challenge and only 1 out of 5 will pull together. And it's mostly because everything changes when you have dementia. It's not just about memory, and it's not just about one thing, and it's not stable, and it's not static, and once it happens, it hasn't happened, and so you're done. It keeps changing. Now, what that means, if you're smart and if you're wise, you start from the very beginning realizing this is a journey. You're going to be on a journey. And when you start a journey, if you're thinking it's just going to be a little short one, a little sprint, well, you don't plan very well. Try not to do the Lone Ranger thing, go off on your own and just do the best you can, because before this is over, you're going to be out of juice, you're going to be out of gas. And there are things that are available, but you need to know that before you need them, because when you need them, you don't have the energy or the will or the ability even at that point to go out and get them. I also would tell you there's lots of skills you're going to need. It's more than just who you know, it's what you know, and how you do what you do becomes incredibly important. And nobody is necessarily born with these talents, and you don't even get that information when you get the diagnosis. So you want to find out what's out there, because what's out there makes a difference. I would say one of the most important things to do as a caregiver is to quit being a caregiver and become a care partner. Quit assuming that the person you're trying to help is going to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And the more you try to push your help at them, the more they're going to push back. And it's important to go, oh, well, this isn't working, and recognize, let me think of something else. Or if I can't think of something else, let me go and find out something else. So my message to you, there are things out there. Find out what your resources are and where to go get them. You don't have to go somewhere physically, but you do have to go somewhere mentally. You have to be willing to make a trip. And that means stop, pause. And here's the most important skill I can give you in the short range. Learn the art of letting it go. You can hold it all in. It won't change anything. Learn to breathe, take a moment, and learn.
So, research tells us that caring for a person living with dementia is the most stressful of all caregiving experiences. And as Teepa just talked about in her video, why? Why is that? Well, our next slide helps us to look at some possible reasons. And as I'm elaborating, see if you can relate to any of these. And also, see if you can find a common thread throughout these reasons. First of all, dementia by nature is unpredictable, and there's always uncertainty about what the future may hold. Not knowing what to expect can be debilitating for all involved. When the person living with dementia has a moment of lucidity where they make complete sense or act like their former selves, we get a false sense of hope. Maybe they've reached a plateau. Maybe they're getting better. Dementia changes a person's personality, and it's only natural to expect them to be who we always knew them to be. When they changed, that's really hard to accept. Dementia causes relationships to change. Suddenly, you aren't the spouse or the adult child anymore. You're now the caregiver, and you're telling them what to do. This role confusion is hard on everyone. When the relationship changes, we naturally begin to grieve what once was. We mourn the loss of that relationship. It can be challenging to work with your family members who have different perceptions about what's happening or the need for care. Family dynamics can be complicated under the best of circumstances. Add in dementia, and the challenges multiply exponentially. Dementia-related behaviors, such as wandering, agitation, aggressive behaviors, and repetitive behaviors, can be incredibly frustrating and challenging to deal with. Caregiving for a person living with dementia is a 24/7 job, even with help. We worry even when we're not around the care recipient. It's common to feel like you're always on high alert, just waiting for the next problem to surface. Researchers have found that a person who provides care for someone living with dementia is twice as likely to suffer from depression as a person providing care for someone without dementia. Not only do caregivers spend significantly more hours per week providing care, they report more employment problems, personal stress, mental and physical health problems, and more family conflict than non-dementia caregivers. So, what's one thing that all of these reasons have in common? Change.
So let's talk about change. Remember, dementia changes everything. First of all, change and stress go hand in hand. And it doesn't matter if it's positive change, such as getting an exciting new job, or having a new baby or a grandbaby, getting married, winning the lottery, or if it's change caused by something unpleasant. Because change involves not just a beginning of something, but also an ending of what was. And there's always a certain amount of loss associated with change. And as humans, it's natural for us to grieve losses. But remember that whatever the change or how out of control things might seem, we always do have a choice. Now, we may not love all the options, but in every situation in life, we always do have options. So, with regard to change, what are our choices? Well, you can always choose whether or not you deal with the change. Denial is a popular coping mechanism. Now, it's not a healthy one, but for a lot of us, denial tends to be the default reaction. You can choose how you deal with the change. Many of us fight change and desperately try to cling to how things used to be. So, what's your attitude about the situation? Are you going to view it as, well, this is awful, I hate it, and sink into the depths of despair? Or are you going to look at the situation as a challenge, an opportunity to be creative and resourceful? One of the things that I kept repeating to myself during the pandemic was, with crisis comes opportunity. So how can I use this awfulness to learn and grow and be better? And lastly, are you going to accept the change by looking ahead and planning for the what ifs? Or are you going to wait for a crisis to make the decision for you? By the way, the vast majority of caregivers do wait for that crisis to spur them into action. The big problem here is that when we make decisions in a crisis situation, we greatly reduce our options. So caregivers who deny change or try to maintain the status quo, those who try to cling to the way things were in the past, are actually wasting time and energy trying to keep things the same. You know, it's futile because things aren't the same, no matter how much we wish they were. We may lose opportunities for the care recipient to take part in planning for his or her future. And this is especially important in the early stages of dementia, when the person still is able to make some decisions and share their wishes. If the caregiver is clinging to the way that things used to be, in other words, denying the dementia diagnosis, sometimes they avoid talking about important issues with their loved one until it's too late, until their loved one is no longer capable of making sound decisions. When we cling to the way things used to be, we develop unrealistic expectations. It's hard to accept that our loved one is declining, and it's natural for us to keep encouraging the person to just try harder. But it's not a function of their not trying. It's a function of the fact that abilities are being lost. And the more the person struggles to try just to please us, the worse things become. And caregivers who deny change tend to burn out because they can't accept that the care needs are more than they can handle on their own. They wait too long to seek help or guidance or support from others. Or they wait too long to even consider memory care placement. So remember that old saying, the only constant is change? We have to learn to live with it. And we have to use change as a chance to learn and to grow and maybe even improve. There are many studies that support the fact that burnout leads to serious physical and mental issues for the caregiver. The combination of loss, prolonged stress, the physical demands of caregiving, and the biological vulnerabilities that just naturally come with aging place you at risk for significant health problems as well as an earlier death. Studies also show that caregivers are less likely than non-caregivers to practice preventative health care and self-care. So what does burnout look like? Most of you probably know the definition and the symptoms of burnout, but I always think it's really important for a quick review. Now, the physical symptoms listed here are a result of a heightened stress response, the fight or flight response. Because when we're exposed to stressors, our body is in a constant state of readiness for action. Now, when there's a physical reason for the stress response, these physiological changes are helpful. They enable us to survive, to run, or to fight. But when what's triggering the activation of the sympathetic nervous system is psychological, the body still responds in a physical way. And since we're not performing a physical function, running, fighting, screaming, we don't release this buildup of energy. So it remains in our system and it can slowly cause damage. And we experience many, if not all, of the physical symptoms that are listed here. But burnout doesn't just have physical symptoms. The emotional manifestations are just as debilitating and dangerous. So as you skim through these lists, ask yourself if you're experiencing any of these now. Just kind of take a second to look through those.
How do you know if you're experiencing caregiver burnout? Take a look at this list and count up how many apply to you. I'll read through them with you. You no longer find pleasure in things that you once found enjoyable. Friends and family have expressed concerns about your well-being. You're getting negative feedback at work. You're having problems with your spouse. You experience intense and recurrent feelings of anger, sadness, worry, or fear. You have difficulty concentrating. You have trouble sleeping, drastic weight changes, or other unexplained health problems. You use a substance to cope with, manage, or suppress painful feelings. Now, if you were able to check 2 or more of these on this list, there's a good chance you're already burned out.
So I always think that the first step in solving a problem is to acknowledge that there is a problem. And then the next step is trying to figure out what has caused the problem. And it's only then that we can begin to look for solutions. Otherwise, we're just putting on Band-Aids, temporary fixes. So typically, caregiver burnout is caused by one or more of these. Role confusion, unrealistic expectations and demands, lack of control, priority paralysis, family conflicts, and the big one, too much stress with too few rewards. So we're going to talk about each of these in greater detail, starting with role confusion. So what do we mean by this? It can be difficult for a person to separate their role as caregiver from their role as a spouse, as an adult child, as a friend, etc. And the longer we provide care, the more difficult it is. I'm sure a lot of you are feeling the way I did when I was caring for my mom. I felt a very definite role reversal where I was the one doing the parenting. Now, I didn't like that, nor did my mom, although she was very grateful for the attention and care I was giving her. Even if you're providing care for a spouse with dementia, it's pretty easy to slip into that parenting role. And this isn't good for either of you, and it contributes to the decline of your relationship. So there's a couple of things that can be done to minimize this role confusion. We can practice something called both and thinking. Now, many of us have a tendency to think in extremes, either or, black or white. I know that's really true for me. But both and thinking is the opposite of either or. In other words, both and gives us the opportunity to have our cake and eat it too, because we don't have to make a choice. So some examples would be, I am both a care partner and a person with my own needs. I don't have to give up things I enjoy because I'm taking care of someone else. I can find time to take care of me too. So I take care of both him and myself. Now, as care partners, we do make sacrifices, right? And that can lead to resentment and anger and sadness. But that doesn't mean that those emotions can rule our lives. So let's put that into the both and perspective. I am both sad about things that I've had to give up and happy that I have a new grandbaby on the way or a fun trip planned. By the way, it's really important to always have something pleasant, enjoyable, fun to look forward to. So I hope that both and thing makes sense. Now, sometimes it's easy to get wrapped up in the caregiver role. So make time in the day to focus on your relationship with whomever you're providing care for, your spouse, your parent. Find things to do together that you did prior to dementia. Schedule time for that in every day's agenda. This is so important for both you and the one for whom you provide care. And the best way to give yourself time to focus on your relationship is to delegate some of your caregiving responsibilities to other family members, willing friends, or even hiring in-home care providers. Because you still need to maintain your identity as a wife, a husband, a son, a daughter, a granddaughter, a friend, whatever. And it's really hard to do that when you're tending to your loved one's personal hygiene needs. So ask for help. And you're going to hear Gia and I say that a lot during this presentation today because it is so important.
If you're like many of us, you may have a tendency to place unrealistic expectations and demands on yourself and other family members and the one for whom you're providing care. Many caregivers, myself included, think that you're the only person who can do it all. You may think that you're the only person your loved one trusts. Or maybe you think no one else can do the job as well as I can. Not necessarily true. Not only is doing it all not only unrealistic, but it can end up being unhealthy for everyone involved. We may expect others, especially family members, to step up and do their part. And we can't understand why family members are unwilling to help us. We may not take into account that everyone reacts to dementia in different ways. Denial, discomfort, withdrawal. We may expect that others demonstrate the same type of commitment that we have. These expectations, unfortunately, may lead us to judge, and judging destroys relationships. If you establish yourself as the primary caregiver, your family may come to expect that either you can or that you want to do it all. Early in the process, be sure that family members know that this is a team effort and you welcome their help and support. Getting others involved in care early on helps the care recipient to understand from the beginning that there are others who can help to meet his or her needs. It's difficult to acknowledge that a once competent adult now requires help with basic tasks and skills. In our minds, we expect that they should be able to do the things that they used to do, and it's hard not to feel frustrated and impatient. Imagine their frustration, sadness, and anger over the loss of their abilities too. Dementia is a family disease. It's tough on everyone. Remember, the person living with dementia is doing the best they can, and so are you. Also, it's important to set boundaries and practice saying no when you can. You don't owe anyone a reason or an excuse. Your priorities are your self-care and the care of your loved one. Also, it's very important to practice saying yes when others offer to help you.
Okay, the next one, lack of control. This is always a big one for me. The caregiving situation itself is so unpredictable. And we feel as if everybody and everything else is controlling us, like we're at their mercy. We try to make plans, and then something happens, and things change. Remember, we talked about change a few slides back. It can be debilitating. We talked about how unpredictable dementia is because we never know what to expect from our care recipients' behavior. One day or even 1 hour, our loved one is making perfect sense. But the next moment, all of that can change because you only have limited control over their behaviors and their actions. Now, many caregivers become frustrated by a lack of resources and skills to effectively plan, manage, and organize their loved one's care. Now, when we're talking resources, we're looking at financial, because long-term care is ridiculously expensive. Not having enough help falls into the category of resources. So does lack of time and lack of support, perceived or otherwise. Do you sometimes feel as if you don't have the proper training and skills to do everything that you're expected to do as a caregiver? Tipa addressed that just a little bit a few slides back. I know that I felt that way years back when I cared for my mom. As far as I know, there's not much in our educational or experiential backgrounds that prepares us to be care providers. Do they teach that in high school or college? Not mine. Now, some of us are fortunate in that we watched our parents provide care to their parents or spouses, but otherwise we are playing it by ear and learning as we go. I know that's where I was 10 or 12 years ago. Knowledge is power, and I suspect that's why you're here today. You're taking a step forward in gaining some control over what often feels like an uncontrollable situation. So, priority paralysis. Honestly, I don't know if this is a real term or if it's something I heard somewhere or something that I made up. Regardless of what you call it, the phenomenon is real. So, priority paralysis is when you have so much to do and are feeling so overwhelmed that you are not motivated to do anything. You become paralyzed, curled up on the couch, walking around in circles, frozen in bed watching dumb TV shows. Do you know what I'm talking about? Because I certainly have experienced this. So, how do you break yourself free from this? First of all, realize that caregivers always will have more to do than time to do it. Just accept that because you can't change it. So be realistic. Remember, we just talked about unreasonable demands and unreasonable expectations and lack of control. There will never be enough time to do everything you need to do, and that's okay. So there's always tomorrow. We humans are not perfect. And some of us don't even try things because we're afraid of not doing them well. Kind of a why bother attitude. So if that's you, you need to let that go and accept that everything about caregiving is trial and lots of errors. So the best strategy for breaking out of priority paralysis, just do something, anything. It doesn't even have to be the most important thing on your list or even on your list, because anything is better than just sitting there ruminating about how overwhelmed you are.
Family conflicts are challenging under the best of circumstances. Throw in a dementia diagnosis and chaos may ensue. So I'll read a quote from the AARP article that's on your resource list. Lone caregivers without family support may be at high risk for burnout. The more relatives who are involved in caregiving, though, the greater the likelihood of conflicts and power struggles. These family members may roughly jostle with one another for control over decision making, therefore damaging their relationships for years to come. But it is the care recipient who suffers the most, feeling distressed and guilty that tasks relating to his or her health have resulted in skirmishes among loved ones. It's kind of a double-edged sword. Doing everything yourself leads to burnout. But having family involved adds another layer of challenges. As the primary caregiver, you've got to find a way to balance this situation. And it's only natural for your family members to have different expectations, different levels of understanding, and different relationships with the care recipient. On top of this, everyone brings baggage from their childhood to the table. These elements may create emotionally charged situations. And emotionally charged situations are usually not conducive to cooperation. Another factor that can complicate the caregiving situation. These days, our families don't look like Leave It to Beaver or Father Knows Best, if those of you out there are old enough to understand those references. We have many more layers. We're actually more like the TV show Modern Family, because now families include step parents, perhaps multiple spouses, step and half siblings, and maybe even ex spouses. And all of them may have some skin in the game. According to Teepa Snow, 4 out of 5 families who are caring for one with dementia will fall apart. Only 1 in 5 will pull together and actually come out of the experience as a stronger unit. So, what are some ways to help keep your family intact and functioning during and after the caregiving journey? You'll have to make some commitments. Try to accept family members for who they are, not who you wish they were. And I know this is easier said than done, but you probably have a good sense of what your family members' strengths and weaknesses are, their capabilities. We talked earlier, have realistic expectations. Try to accept and respect differing perspectives and opinions. It's not realistic to expect everyone will act, react, and respond the same way that you do. Another tip from that AARP article. A common rule used by high-functioning teams is that the member who offers ideas for doing things differently is required to create a coordinated action plan. This works well for family members. No one can phone in complaints without committing to do more themselves. Also, try to assess what kind of help you really want from your family members. As the team leader, try to be clear about what it is you need. Sometimes we can complain that everyone expects that I do it all. People aren't mind readers. If you want someone to help you, let them know what they can do. Sometimes it's as simple as having someone listen to you and provide emotional support. Sometimes you just want to feel heard and appreciated. Being clear about your needs can help you from getting angry that others are not supporting you in the way that you want. And remember, they can't support you in the way that you want if you don't tell them what you want. And I know we all know that guilt trips are counterproductive. So ask in a way that isn't accusatory, but more, I'm struggling with finding the time to go to the grocery store while caring for mom. Could you either take my list and shop for me, or could you spend an hour with mom while I go to the store? Providing options can help other family members feel less like you're bossing them around. And the money aspect of things is tricky too. Try not to let conversations about financial issues and inheritance get in the way of the most important thing, helping your care recipient to feel loved and supported. And again, all of this is way easier said than done, but you may want to make this one of your top goals. There are a couple really good articles about this on the resource list, so check it out. So our next slide talks about making more of a commitment to communicate with everyone. So make sure roles and responsibilities are not only clear, but that everyone has agreed to their own responsibility. If there's a family member who's particularly challenging, be aware of the potential to alienate them, either inadvertently or intentionally. Excluding them will make them feel left out, and that'll come back to bite you in the end. In the same vein, don't withhold information. Everyone deserves to know what's going on. It can be extremely helpful to write everything down and make sure that everyone has a copy of what gets discussed and what's agreed upon. That way, there's a written reference available should it be needed. And regardless of how you feel about technology, it has, in many cases, been the only thing that's enabled us to stay connected and do our jobs during the pandemic. And because it was a necessity, some people who you never would have expected could use technology are now actually pretty proficient at it. So now there's no excuse not to share information with family members who don't live nearby. And honestly, Zoom meetings are so much easier to schedule and attend than trying to get everyone together in person. Also, you can record them to share them with those who were not able to attend. It's really important for family members to share tips and strategies for what works insofar as interacting with the person who has dementia. With the goal of providing the best care, we really do want everyone to be successful. One of the easiest ways to manage family struggles is to always place your care recipient's needs as your top priority. And know that you'll have to grin and bear it sometimes, a lot, but in the end, it'll be worth it. And if your family situation is particularly challenging, you may want to ask for help from someone who can be objective, such as a clergy member or a therapist. If your loved one happens to be on hospice, the hospice social worker can be an excellent mediator. So let's talk about minimizing burnout. What can you do? Well, you've taken a very important first step. You're here. You're gaining understanding of some very important things that will come up during this caregiving journey, and you're educating yourself. Not only will this step help to keep the burnout in check, but it'll also be important for you to share the information you get with your family so that you can make educated decisions together as a care partner team. So we'll spend the rest of this presentation looking at some other things that will help. How to form a care team, changing the way that you view the situation. Remember, as we said earlier, it's not the situation that causes distress, but how we handle it. Self-care, so the care that you give to yourself is the care that you give to your loved one. Really important to remember. And like we promised earlier, focus on the rewards of caregiving.
Okay, so let's look at forming a care team. The first step is determining what type of help and support you need. Actually, the first step is recognizing that you can't do it alone. Remember that old adage, it takes a village. And in the next slide, we'll take a closer look at a strategy for figuring out what kind of help you need. We just talked about the importance of working together with family members. And in most cases, family will make up the lion's share of your care team, but oftentimes we rely on others to help out as well. Our friends, our trusted coworkers, and paid caregivers. Establish from the very beginning that everyone's help is necessary in order to best meet the needs of your care recipient and you. Now, we each have our own system of task management or our own organizational style. So it's important to find a simple strategy or a tool that everyone feels comfortable with. Now, there's a lot of good web-based systems and apps out there, such as Caring Village, Care Zone, and Lots of Helping Hands, just to name a couple of them. But be sure that everyone on the team is committed to using whatever system is established.
Now, we know that forming a care team is easier said than done, especially if you're one of those people who finds it easier to just do things yourself rather than ask for help. You're afraid someone's going to mess it up and then you'll just have to redo it anyway. Sound familiar? Well, we can't be good caregivers without a team to support us. And we can't tell our helpers what we need if we haven't taken the time to figure out what that help looks like. So you can start by writing down what you need. Think about what it is that you want others to know about your situation and how you're feeling. Share that with those you trust, and it's okay to be vulnerable. Jot down the names of a couple of people you know who you can go to for a pep talk. Someone who won't judge you if you have a meltdown. Someone who won't try to fix things, but who will be there just to let you talk or cry or vent or whatever. Then jot down the names of people you trust and that your loved one trusts to physically help with care or who can stay with your loved one while you take a break. Who can you call at the last minute? Who could you count on to come through in a pinch should you need it? This may sound weird, but who can you make arrangements with in advance to help at the last minute? So what do you need? Don't wait until a need or a crisis arises. Anticipate the areas in which you can ask others to help you. Take a look at this list in general and see if it helps you get started. And don't be afraid to say yes when someone offers to help. Say yes at the moment the person offers to help instead of saying, well, maybe, or, okay, I'll just let you know, thanks. Have a list of errands or tasks that you need help with at the ready. Keep in mind, people feel useful and gratified when they're able to help others. And your care recipient will also benefit greatly by getting accustomed to accepting help from others. It's a great opportunity for them to have some socialization with someone other than you. And remember, as a caregiver, you're the team leader. You need to be prepared to manage your team, and you need to learn to trust others.
So remember, when dealing with an uncontrollable situation, you do control one thing: your response to that situation. It's not the task itself that overwhelms, but how you, the caregiver, perceive the task. So just like the person living with dementia's perception is his reality, distorted or not, your perception is your reality. So are you looking at the situation in a negative doomsday perspective, which is easy enough to do? But can you spin it to make it work for you rather than against you? So what do we mean by the term reframing? Have you ever noticed that a certain picture frame can change your perception of the picture inside it? Because the frame you put around something sets the tone for what's inside. Now, the picture or piece of art or photograph remains the same, but the frame around it can bring out different aspects, colors, feelings. So not only can we change the frames on pieces of art or photography, we can reframe situations, events, even roles. When we change the frame, our perceptions and our attitudes change. So let's use stress as an example. Does the word stress have a negative connotation for you? Well, of course it does. And we just spent some time talking about how burnout caused by unmanageable stress can kill you. So I always thought of stress as bad until I saw a TED Talk by Dr. Kelly McGonigal, who's a health psychologist at Stanford. And she shows us how to put a different frame around stress, a positive one that can change the way we perceive it and make it work to our advantage. So let's take a look at that.
But first, I want you to make a little confession to me. In the past year, I want you to just raise your hand if you've experienced relatively little stress. Anyone? Mm-hmm. How about a moderate amount of stress? Who's experienced a lot of stress? Yeah, me too. But that is not my confession. My confession is this: I'm a health psychologist, and my mission is to help people be happier and healthier. But I fear that something I've been teaching for the last 10 years is doing more harm than good, and it has to do with stress. For years, I've been telling people stress makes you sick. It increases the risk of everything from the common cold to cardiovascular disease. Basically, I've turned stress into the enemy. But I've changed my mind about stress. And today,
I want to change yours. Let me start with the study that made me rethink my whole approach to stress. This study tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years, and they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then they used public death records to find out who died. Okay, some bad news first. People who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful for your health. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful were no more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study, including people who had relatively little stress. Now, the researchers estimated that over the 8 years they were tracking deaths, 182,000 Americans died prematurely, not from stress, but from the belief that stress is bad for you. That is over 20,000 deaths a year. Now, if that estimate is correct, that would make believing stress is bad for you the 15th largest cause of death in the United States last year, killing more people than skin cancer, HIV, AIDS, and homicide. You can see why this study freaked me out. Here I've been spending so much energy telling people stress is bad for your health. So this study got me wondering, can changing how you think about stress make you healthier? And here the science says yes. When you change your mind about stress, you can change your body's response to stress. Now, to explain how this works, I want you all to pretend that you are participants in a study designed to stress you out. It's called the social stress test. You come into the laboratory and you're told you have to give a 5-minute impromptu speech on your personal weaknesses to a panel of expert evaluators sitting right in front of you. And to make sure you feel the pressure, there are bright lights and a camera in your face, kind of like this. And the evaluators have been trained to give you discouraging nonverbal feedback, like this. Now that you're sufficiently demoralized, time for part 2, a math test. And unbeknownst to you, the experimenter has been trained to harass you during it. Now, we're gonna all do this together. It's gonna be fun for me. Okay. I want you all to count backwards from 996 in increments of 7. You're gonna do this out loud as fast as you can, starting with 996. Go. Go faster. Faster, please. You're going too slow. Stop, 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 stop. That guy made a mistake. We're gonna have to start all over again. You're not very good at this, are you? Okay, so you get the idea. Now, if you were actually in this study, you'd probably be a little stressed out. Your heart might be pounding, you might be breathing faster, maybe breaking out into a sweat. And normally we interpret these physical changes as anxiety or signs that we aren't coping very well with the pressure. But what if you viewed them instead as signs that your body was energized, was preparing you to meet this challenge? Now, that is exactly what participants were told in a study conducted at Harvard University. Before they went through the social stress test, they were taught to rethink their stress response as helpful. That pounding heart is preparing you for action. If you're breathing faster, it's no problem. It's getting more oxygen to your brain. And participants who learned to view the stress response as helpful for their performance, well, they were less stressed out, less anxious, more confident. But the most fascinating finding to me was how their physical stress response changed. Now, in a typical stress response, your heart rate goes up and your blood vessels constrict like this. And this is one of the reasons that chronic stress is sometimes associated with cardiovascular disease. It's not really healthy to be in this state all the time. But in the study, when participants viewed their stress response as helpful, Their blood vessels stayed relaxed like this. Their heart was still pounding, but this is a much healthier cardiovascular profile. It actually looks a lot like what happens in moments of joy and courage. Over a lifetime of stressful experiences, this one biological change could be the difference between a stress-induced heart attack at age 50 and living well into your 90s. And this is really what the new science of stress reveals, that how you think about stress matters. So my goal as a health psychologist has changed. I no longer want to get rid of your stress. I want to make you better at stress. And we just did a little intervention. If you raised your hand and said you'd had a lot of stress in the last year, we could have saved your life. Because hopefully the next time your heart is pounding from stress, you're going to remember this talk and you're going to think to yourself, this is my body helping me rise to this challenge. And when you view stress in that way, your body believes you and your stress response becomes healthier. Now, I said I have over a decade of demonizing stress to redeem myself from. So we are going to do one more intervention. I want to tell you about one of the most underappreciated aspects of the stress response. And the idea is this: stress makes you social. To understand the side of stress, we need to talk about a hormone, oxytocin. And I know oxytocin has already gotten as much hype as a hormone can get. It even has its own cute nickname, the cuddle hormone, because it's released when you hug someone. But this is a very small part of what oxytocin is involved in. Oxytocin is a neurohormone. It fine-tunes your brain's social instincts. It primes you to do things that strengthen close relationships. Oxytocin makes you crave physical contact with your friends and family. It enhances your empathy. It even makes you more willing to help and support the people you care about. Some people have even suggested we should snort oxytocin to become more compassionate and caring. But here's what most people don't understand about oxytocin. It's a stress hormone. Your pituitary gland pumps this stuff out as part of the stress response. It's as much a part of your stress response as the adrenaline that makes your heart pound. And when oxytocin is released in the stress response, it is motivating you to seek support. Your biological stress response is nudging you to tell someone how you feel instead of bottling it up. Your stress response wants to make sure you notice when someone else in your life is struggling so that you can support each other. When life is difficult, your stress response wants you to be surrounded by people who care about you. Okay, so how is knowing this side of stress going to make you healthier? Well, oxytocin doesn't only act on your brain, it also acts on your body. And one of its main roles in your body is to protect your cardiovascular system from the effects of stress. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It also helps your blood vessels stay relaxed during stress. But my favorite effect on the body is actually on the heart. Your heart has receptors for this hormone. And oxytocin helps heart cells regenerate and heal from any stress-induced damage. This stress hormone strengthens your heart. And the cool thing is that all of these physical benefits of oxytocin are enhanced by social contact and social support. So when you reach out to others under stress, either to seek support or to help someone else, you release more of this hormone, your stress response becomes healthier, and you actually recover faster from stress. I find this amazing that your stress response has a built-in mechanism for stress resilience. And that mechanism is human connection. I want to finish by telling you about one more study. And listen up, because this study could also save a life. This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States, and they ranged in age from 34 to 93. And they started the study by asking, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, How much time have you spent helping out friends, neighbors, people in your community? And then they use public records for the next 5 years to find out who died. Okay, so the bad news first. For every major stressful life experience, like financial difficulties or family crisis, that increased the risk of dying by 30%. But, and I hope you are expecting a but by now, but that wasn't true for everyone. People who spent time caring for others showed absolutely no stress-related increase in dying, 0. Caring created resilience. And so we see once again that the harmful effects of stress on your health are not inevitable. How you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you create the biology of courage. And when you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask for more stressful experiences in my life, but this science has given me a whole new appreciation for stress. Stress gives us access to our hearts. The compassionate heart that finds joy and meaning in connecting with others. And yes, your pounding physical heart working so hard to give you strength and energy. And when you choose to view stress in this way, you're not just getting better at stress, you're actually making a pretty profound statement. You're saying that you can trust yourself to handle life's challenges. And you're remembering that you don't have to face them alone. Thank you.
Okay, I hope this video gave you, a new way to look at stress so you can focus on how to make it work for you. I know I personally need to remind myself to do that all the time. Now, there's a really excellent article on the resource list that goes into greater detail about ways to reframe a situation by modifying the way we think about it. The article explains some of the ways that we as humans tend to engage in what psychologists call distorted thinking or cognitive distortions. Now, we don't have time today for me to elaborate on all of these, but I hope you're going to take a look at the article. It's called Dementia, Caregiving, and Controlling Frustration, because I really think it's an excellent one.
So the last section of this presentation is specifically about self-care. And I'm sure you've all heard the analogy that compares putting on our own oxygen masks when you're on an airplane first, before we help others with theirs. The analogy compares that to self-care. This shows us that we will be useless in providing care for others unless we first put on our own oxygen mask. So what's your oxygen mask?
Now, one of the kindest things that you can do for yourself is to cut yourself some slack, because no one is perfect. And we all experience emotions that we might not want to admit to anyone, let alone ourselves. Honestly, who says out loud something like, "Boy, I really resent you," but that doesn't mean you're not feeling it. If only we were perfect, we would not be feeling any of these troublesome emotions. But we've already established that we're not perfect. We're human. So it's a strength to recognize when your emotions are controlling you rather than you controlling your emotions. Our emotions are messages. We need to listen to them. They exist for a reason. However negative or painful, our emotions are useful tools for understanding what's happening to us. So even uncomfortable emotions such as anger, guilt, resentment contain important messages. So an article on the resource list, The Emotional Side of Caregiving, does a really good job of explaining all of these emotions, and it gives you some really helpful strategies for understanding and dealing with them. It's important to acknowledge these emotions. Now, some therapists refer to it as honoring your emotions, because they're your emotions. They're a part of you. It doesn't mean necessarily that you're going to act on any of them. And if you're like most of us, you'll probably try to hide them. But we need to learn to express them in a safe environment. So what does that look like? Writing down your feelings in a journal. You may even want to write down your feelings and then throw away the paper or delete the document. If you have someone in your life whom you trust and who will not judge you, talk with that person honestly about how you're feeling. Or talk to your pets. I think one of the best things you can do is to find a support group. These days, there are a lot of them online, and they are surprisingly effective. You just need to be sure that the group is run by a reliable source, such as the Alzheimer's Association. Teepa Snow has some. We at Hope Hospice run a couple of them. Or you can talk with a therapist. They're bound by confidentiality. In my opinion, going to a therapist is one of the best gifts you can give yourself. It kind of saved my sanity when I was caring for my mom. So give yourself permission to honor your emotions and try to understand why you're feeling the way you do, and forgive yourself. Don't feel guilty. It's okay, because we all feel these at some time. I know I did.
So I asked you a few minutes ago, what is your oxygen mask? Well, self-care is personal. So you need to figure out what works for you, what brings you joy and re-energizes you. This list that you see on the screen is just a snapshot of some ideas for you. Really, whatever gives you pleasure and refuels you is where you should focus your self-care energies. I know someone whose favorite form of self-care was to just sit outside alone in her garden and write down a list of everything that she was grateful for. Some recent research published in the Journal of Behavioral Sciences found that one of the very best stress reducers is being creative. Creativity can encompass art, music, dance, crafts, gardening, just to name a few. The author states, when using our bodies, such as dance, our hands as in drawing or coloring, our mind makes space for the activity that we're doing in place of the stress that we felt before. Asking our brain to focus on creating something puts us in a sort of meditative state, releasing dopamine and slowing our breath. Creative activities at their best elicit a state of flow, a sense of engagement and letting go without conscious control. So whatever brings you comfort, peace, or rejuvenates you, that's your oxygen mask. So make it a priority.
So one of the very best strategies for reducing that fight or flight response is to just breathe. Teepa mentioned that in the video clip a little bit ago, the importance of just kind of letting go. And breathing enables us to do that. Now, it seems kind of silly, like, yeah, we all breathe, we have to breathe, but we really need to think about how it is that we are breathing. So here's a really good strategy. Square breathing, it's also known as box breathing, has been positively associated with everything from better sleep and improved heart health to reduced anxiety and depression. So this particular strategy has 4 steps. Inhale, hold, exhale, and then hold again. So as the name suggests, the pattern of breathing can be symbolized by a box or a square. So again, it sounds simple, but this is one of those things that we have to practice to make ourselves do it several times a day. Really, it can help you to get those troublesome stress responses under control. It can help you to improve your concentration. It can really deepen relaxation. I actually did it a couple of days ago when I was getting some lab work done, and the blood draw was really hurting a lot, and I didn't want to be a big baby. And then I realized I'm holding my breath, which is not a good thing. So I started the box breathing, and it actually really helped a lot. So let's just take a moment and practice this together. Now, I did make a simple change in the original instructions because the pattern originally called for you to inhale through your nose to a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, and then exhale. Now, the instructions said exhale for 8, but I like doing it for a count of 4 because it's way easier for me to remember 4 fours or 4 square. So let's try it together. We'll do 3 repetitions. All right, is everybody ready? Kind of shake things out a little bit. And let's go. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And hold it, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And hold it, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And hold it, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's breathe normally now. And hopefully that little activity gave you kind of a sense of, I don't know, I think it just feels so good to do this. They recommend that you try to do this for about 5 minutes, several times a day. You can do it with your eyes open, your eyes closed. I do it when I'm driving and about ready to get angry at somebody. I keep my eyes open at that point. When I'm trying to sleep at night and finding there's anxious thoughts, rumbling around my brain, then of course I'm going to close my eyes and hope that it's going to put me to sleep.
Okay, so we did say that there are rewards to caregiving. So let's take a look at some examples of this. Remember, a major cause of burnout is too much stress and too few rewards. Sometimes it's difficult to recognize the good when you feel as if you're drowning in an overwhelming situation, but tremendous rewards really do exist. The list on this slide is from a book called The Mindful Caregiver. The author surveyed people who had been family caregivers and asked them to list some of the rewards that they gained from the experience. These are a few examples. Caregiving can provide you with an opportunity to create positive memories as you spend time with your loved one. If you allow yourself to be open to it, caregiving can improve relationships, especially when you realize there may not be much time left. If the relationship had been rocky, providing care may give you a chance to heal some of those old wounds. Being patient with someone who has dementia is so difficult. It's important to check your own stress and anxiety and impatience at the door. Caregiving can give us a chance to pay back our parents or our spouses for the care that they may have provided to us throughout our lives. And caregiving for another person can evoke a type of love and joy that you may not have expected. See, there are some rewards.
So here are a few more as voiced by actual caregivers. I can really relate to the first one, creating a role model for the next generation of caregivers. And I sure hope our kids were watching as we cared for their grandparents. Caregiving is a way to honor our loved ones. It's important that once our loved one passes, we're not left with regrets about the care we provided. Having peace of mind that you did the best you could do. If you've ever lost someone suddenly, you know how important it is to have time to say all of the things that had gone unsaid. And now with dementia, it is a long goodbye. Um, Changed your priorities, learned what's important. For me, caring for my mom taught me to focus on the importance of quality of life and to appreciate the little joys. And as I mentioned in an earlier slide, caregiving enables us to develop new skills and competencies that most of us never imagined that we would need in a good way. And when your caregiving journey is over, I hope that all of you can be satisfied that you did a good job and that you're proud of the role that you played in ensuring that your loved ones' last months and years were the best they could be. And I'm hoping that you're practicing self-care now, so you'll have many years, many healthy years left to do whatever it is that you want to do. Okay.
So I know you can all read this slide yourself, but we think that it's important enough that you need to actually hear it too. So I'm going to read it aloud. I have the right to take care of myself, including resting when I'm tired, eating well, and taking breaks from caregiving when I need to. This is not an act of selfishness. This will enable me to take better care of my loved one. I have the right to seek help from others, even though my loved one may object. I recognize my own endurance and strength and acknowledge that I don't have to do it all by myself. I have the right to socialize, maintain my own interests, and do the things that I enjoy. I have the right to acknowledge my feelings of frustration, anger, and depression, and to express those feelings in creative, constructive ways. I have the right to disallow any attempt by my loved one, either intentional or not, to manipulate me through guilt, anger, or depression.
I have the right to receive consideration, affection, forgiveness, and acceptance for what I do for my loved one, as long as I offer these qualities in return. I have the right to take pride in what I'm accomplishing and to applaud the courage and the creativity it has sometimes taken me to meet the needs of my loved one. I have the right to protect my individuality and my right to make a life for myself that will sustain me at the time when my loved one no longer needs my full-time help. So this last right is really important. We can get so caught up in our lives as care partners that that role becomes our identity, sometimes to the extent that we ignore or neglect other important aspects of our lives, because we tend to put our own lives on hold. And then when our loved one passes, not only do we have this huge void from losing our loved one, but we realize that life has gone on without us, maybe even left us behind. So it's essential that you don't lose your identity and the things that are important to you, because you're going to have a full life to return to after your role as caregiver is over. And you're going to want to be ready for that.